The social democracy in the United States is not mainstream. Absolutely not.
Ideas popular among most Americans if they are fairly polled, and the default sort of Northern European social democracy. So to say that that's far left doesn't seem super accurate. It is also true that as opposed to some on the
you guys have a really big problem in figuring out, like, I feel like on the internet you guys don't know where any political spectrums are. Hold on, where? Somebody in my subreddit commented, this got so many upvotes. We're supposed to be like a political community, or maybe not. Maybe we're just a game playing community. Maybe that's how we do now. Labels are kind of a waste of time, but I don't see Pakman as far left. Policy-wise, he's probably slightly to the right of Elizabeth Warren. If that's far left, the Overton window is... Bro, Elizabeth Warren wants to 2x the minimum wage. She wants single-payer exclusive healthcare. I'm pretty sure she wants free education for the entire country, and I'm pretty sure she was in favor of a wealth tax. That puts Elizabeth Warren on the far left in every country on the planet, except for maybe some socialist South American. I don't know, but like everywhere in Europe, Elizabeth Warren would be far left. You guys online are insane. You guys are like, oh yeah, I'm in France, where the centrist party is talking about like a $50 whatever the currency is minimum wage, or like exclusive single payer, no multi-payer system, like free education at the cost of entry for every single student. Like, bro, what do you guys are insane. This is literally the Bernie Sanders would be a centrist in Europe. Do you really think 15 an hour minimum wage is a far left position? Yes! What do you mean? I think 15 an hour in the United States of America is a pretty far left position, yeah. We might have been able to get support for a 12 an hour minimum wage, maybe 12 an hour, but 15 an hour died. It didn't make it hardly anywhere in the United States. It seems mainstream. Why does Destiny think he is so much better at gauging this than everyone else? Clearly his view isn't popular. My view is not popular online, because online you guys are young, you guys are white, and you guys are very left-leaning. So of course, in your eyes, like, oh yeah, well, where's the political spectrum? Like, let's see. This is the political spectrum for you guys. Right here is Biden, okay? Biden is like center-right, because he's a liberal. Here you've got AOC. Here is Elizabeth Warren. She's like maybe center-left. And then kind of like medium leftish maybe is like Bernie Sanders. And then everything over here, which includes probably like 70% of the Democratic establishment, everything past here are Nazis. This is your guys' political spectrum, okay? You guys are fucked in the head. Yes, Destiny's obviously a lot more in touch with normal people and his peers. I think I am. Yeah, I do think so. Because I spent a lot more time in these spaces reading alternative content, or not alternative content, reading content that is belonging to political opposites than you fuckers obviously do. You guys are actually insane. Elizabeth Warren was far left on the Democratic platform for nominees. Like, she was literally one of the far left candidates. What are you talking about?
So-called far left. I'm not a dogmatic ideologue where I blindly follow a party line or get involved in tribal identity, and that makes me like Destiny. I think he also doesn't do that. I've been critical of the Democratic Party, I've been critical of the progressive movement, I've been critical of corporate media when it is appropriate, like Destiny. I also regularly engage with people from different parts of the political spectrum, different backgrounds. I've done the Joe Rogan show twice, did Lex Friedman, I was on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, the Trump supporter, etc. What you also have to understand is that there's a movement in the US, the right wing, that calls what I just described far left. I think that they're wrong. There's a movement in the US and globally, socialists, that call my views center left. I put myself between center left and far left because we're sort of forced into this political spectrum. But the funniest thing about all of this is...
Oh, so he doesn't even disagree with me.
that Destiny's views and my views line up almost exactly on most issues. As far as I know, he supports many of the same policies I do. He once praised me as a left-wing commentator who's reasonable and intellectually honest. So if I'm far left, I think Destiny is also far left. Now, I will say one other thing, and this is speculation, okay? And I'll talk to Destiny anytime. He can't, I guess, go on my Twitch streams because he's banned on Twitch and it's a whole mess, but I'd love to talk about this. Destiny might label me as far left because he may be going through a period of distancing himself from the progressive wing.
He heard far left and then his brain is like, oh, Destiny's like attacking
of the left, and he may want to appeal to a more centrist audience. I don't know if that's the case. I'm speculating. I also think that there's a false equivalence between even comparing the Daily Wire to the David Pakman Show, because the Daily Wire is a right-wing propaganda outlet that is out there to spread disinformation and to fearmonger on a daily basis, and they are funded by millionaire donors who have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo and undermining democracy.
Okay.
You're familiar with The Boy Who Cried Wolf, I'm sure, and there's two kind of parallels within there. There's the obvious parallel being you shouldn't lie because false in one thing, false in all things. But then there's the other parallel of when do you trust a liar? How many times can someone be wrong before they are no longer trusted? So the people in the village of the boy who cried wolf didn't fire the guy who was hired to look for wolves, and he kept calling wolf. So the one time he calls for wolf, and then the wolves are actually there, the entire village loses their whole flock because they didn't trust the guy who called wolf. So you have companies like CNN and Fox that constantly lie, and CNN kind of looks at Fox and kind of checks Fox. It's kind of CNN's job to say Fox is lying here. It's kind of Fox's job to say CNN is lying here. And you had a conversation a long time ago about Tom Cruise and the pharmaceutical industry when he was on Matt Lauer acting like a fool, and you said that Tom Cruise was right. I forgot the analogy you used. It was a good analogy, but you said Tom Cruise is like a broken clock, essentially, that he constantly says that the pharmaceutical industry is wrong and they're doing evil stuff, and every now and then he's going to be right. But in this instance, he had a very specific claim that I feel might have actually been the boy crying wolf, and there was actually a wolf. He said that there was no chemical imbalance in the brain. That concept isn't real. And he looked at the research, and the research didn't prove that point. And then later on, like 20 years later, research is starting to support that claim that Tom Cruise made 20 years prior, that there is no chemical imbalance in the brain.
I think that my stance on that would be, the way that I would phrase this is, I would say there probably is a chemical imbalance, but when people talk about chemical imbalances in the brain, I think people are too keen to talk about a chemical imbalance like a biological deformity that is like hard set. So like people will say a chemical imbalance in the brain is like having a sixth or seventh finger. Whereas I think the chemicals in your brain are constantly changing, right? So like when you have an orgasm, that causes a quote unquote chemical imbalance in the brain. Or when you sleep in too much, that causes a quote unquote chemical imbalance in the brain. So I would guess that like mental illnesses probably result from different kinds of chemical imbalances, but these are very malleable based on your like daily behavior. They're not like hard set in stone, you know? So I'm guessing Tom Cruise would probably agree with that. When he says there's not a chemical imbalance in the brain, what he probably means, and what I would interpret it as, or what I would hope so, and what I would say is that there might be behaviors or environmental cause or diet things or whatever that are causing your brain neurochemicals to be a little bit off, and you should probably do what you can within your environment to change that without relying on necessarily like a drug to do it. Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, recent research and everything I've seen, I felt a little cautious saying this, but like I don't really know right now how I actually feel about like SSRIs. Like whereas before I'd always say, listen, you should do it. It doesn't help that much, but like at least a little bit plus therapy is good. I'm a lot more on the fence, even like recommending them at all now. To where if a friend tells me like, oh yeah, like I went to a therapist, I think I'm gonna get on SSRIs. Like I would usually encourage like you should really exhaust every single option before heading down that route, because it's a scary route to get locked down. But
yeah. I'll agree with your take there. I'm not an expert in this topic, and I don't pretend to be. But
I do.
Going back to
pretend to be.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, going back to the boy who cried wolves. Scientology constantly cries wolves about the pharmaceutical industry. But if the pharmaceutical industry messes up, if they have some type of error where they mess up, the CDC is not really in a position to properly monitor large pharmaceutical organizations like Pfizer or anything like that, because they take such large paychecks from those pharmaceutical industry. So it's going to be a terrible situation.
I don't know if I would agree with that. The CDC takes large I don't know if this is necessarily like a huge building block to your point, but I don't think I would agree with that, but go ahead.
It could be wrong, but from what I've read, about 40% of all of the CDC's revenue comes from fees that they charge pharmaceutical industries to get their medications approved.
Sure. So while that might be true, that's markedly different than like, because the other thing kind of sounded like, oh, they're just like paying them off or whatever. Also, I mean, the CDC is an executive branch agency. I mean, they could raise government funding if they needed, but yeah, I'm sure they charge fees to it. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just under the assumption that if you're paying someone to approve your drugs and they're taking paychecks from you, it's a compromise of integrity there. Now, whether or not that has an impact on any pharmaceuticals, I can't answer that question. But just from a high top level, if Company A is being overwatched by Company B and Company A is paying Company B, then for me, there's a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, I could see that kind of being the case. I think some fee is probably important, right? Otherwise, you could have a million companies that are all just like trying to get drugs passed or whatever.